Oh, you know what this... Okay. Totally off topic. I was rewatching recently, just because it ended up in my algorithm again. I was rewatching a bunch of old episodes of Idubbbz Kickstarter crap, which I used to love those videos back in high school, like middle school and high school. I used to love them. I was a big Idubbbz fan back then, and I was rewatching them now, and I remember, I haven't kept up with his content in years. Like, I know people got mad at him because, like, his wife does OnlyFans or whatever, and I don't really care. I know he did the boxing thing, the Creator Clash. I never really paid attention to that because I don't care about boxing. I also, like, didn't know anyone who was involved in that. I knew, like, maybe 2 or 3 people who were involved in that. So I'd never really paid attention to that. But I did watch a video that he made talking about how he regrets a lot of his old content. And I was like, I can see, like, having not watched it in years, I was like, I can see that. I can see where he's coming from, at least. If I can imagine maybe not resonating as much with that or changing a lot. It was a very different time and different, like, culture. And it made sense to me. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, but, I still really love, like, I have a lot of affection and fondness for those videos. I remember really liking them when I was a teenager, and I hadn't actually gone back and watched them in a while. And it's really funny because when I started watching them, it was a very different experience to watch those as a 21-year-old compared to a, 15-year-old, which might not seem like a lot of time, but that is like a lot of time to grow up and stuff. And one of the things that really struck me about it was that, like, how mean he is. It's really, really off-putting, actually. When I went back to watch, like, I was like, man, I didn't remember him being this mean-spirited to so many people. And there's a line where it's like, okay, some people that were featured on that show, which I don't know if anyone knows about. I'm assuming everyone knows about this, but I'm just going to talk about it like that you do. It was a show about bad Kickstarter projects, which was a big thing back in the back in like the 2010s. I feel like Kickstarter is evened out a little more now. It's less popular. It's less well known. People don't just throw up. I feel maybe they do. You just don't hear about as much crap being thrown up on that website anymore. Well, he'd make these videos, and there's some people who were featured on that show who were, like, legitimate scam artists, and they had put together a production that was geared towards, misinforming or misleading customers with either pseudoscience or fake stories. There's some good episodes of the series. He's talking about that one guy who's trying to fundraise for his lemon farm, and he put together this fake video that got on like the news or something, like not a Dateline, but something like that. Was it Dateline? Inside Edition. It got on Inside Edition, not Dateline. It got on like Inside Edition of him staging this thing where there was someone trying to spy on him with a drone, and he shot it down, and it was completely fake. And it's like, wow, what a crazy, weird story. And there's some people who, are just, they're completely out of their depth, and they don't have the ability to deliver on a project, or just the product is fucking stupid, right? And like those things are like, I can understand being more harsh on those people, but then you get, these videos of just some guy who it's some fucking guy in his room who has no idea what he's doing, and he wants to make an MMO or some game, like he wants to make a video game that's way beyond his scope or skill set. He has no ability to manage people. He has no knowledge of programming or making assets or literally anything involved in making a video game. But he wants you to give him $100,000, and he has like because he's got a lot of ideas, and that's the type of person who's like, that's a very different kind of person. Like, they're just sort of clueless. They do deserve to be, to get some kind of pushback, I think, to like actually give them like some reality, but the way you do it doesn't have to be like excuse me, I ate some chili before this. The way you do it doesn't have to be like, Idubbbz will just immediately go at like insulting this guy personally or making fun of his voice, and it's just like, I don't know, there's something about it that just feels mean-spirited. When it's like, it didn't necessarily have to be conveyed that way, and it still could have been funny, you know? I think it still could have been funny without just being so... Like, how many people do you think are just like that guy, and they just suddenly get this way... Because those videos would get, like, 3 million or 4 million views, which is crazy to me, because, you know, in the last... From a current day YouTube perspective, something like a guy sitting in his room talking about Kickstarter projects doesn't feel like it would get that many views. Like, not that many, but it was just what it was like back then. And it's like, how many people do you think are like this guy who got this wave? Like, what were the consequences of that? Did they get, like, harassment because of this? And it's like, does that guy deserve to have people fucking like calling up his family and shit? It's like, no. Like, that's ridiculous. And when I look at those videos, I think like, you know, when I don't know if in that like video about him regretting his past content, if he was like, I don't know if he said it, but I would totally believe him if he said that during that time in his life that he was like a miserable person. I would buy it, because that kind of like harshness and just sort of cruelty towards people, even if you could say it's like a character, it feels sort of like it's not really a character. Like it feels like a reflection of some kind of like deep unhappiness inside, right? Like it's being taken out in a creative form, and that's, I don't know, like, because some videos are actually really funny and there's funny moments, and I can totally see, oh yeah, I totally remember why I love this guy so much when I was a teenager, but yeah, just this sort of uncomfortable new perspective on it. I think maybe just because I'm a lot happier now. So when I see something that feels so counter to that, like I couldn't imagine a happy person, a truly happy person making videos like that in that specific way, like with that delivery. And I think it's interesting. And you'll go back and you'll see comments from people from relatively recently, and you know, it never hit me how weird it was. I remember in that video about his regrets, he said that he would meet fans of his and he didn't like them. Like, he didn't like them as people. They were just severely unpleasant to be around. And I was like, yeah, I can get that, because reading these comments and the people who are so upset with him now, it's like, why are you upset with him? Well, the primary thing for a lot of them is that, like, it's really interesting when you kind of put it all together. It's either like it's because his girlfriend does OnlyFans, or it's because he said that he doesn't like his old content and he shifted to making different stuff. And there's this sort of weird thing that I sort of, maybe I'm armchair psychologizing, but it really feels like Idubbbz, edgy Idubbbz, was like this hero to these people, this hero to these people, and so much so that, like, when he does something that they wouldn't do, like, look, like, if you're, I don't know, man, like, that's a personal decision and like an agreement between them, and they're fucking adults, like him and his wife. Are they white? I don't know if they're married. That's like an agreement between them, and it's like, you know, whatever. Like, that's not really my business. But there's someone who looks at that and they're like, I would never do that. Why would Ian do that? Oh, you've betrayed me. Or like the whole selling out, like, you only stop doing it because YouTube started demonetizing videos that were edgy and cool like you. You sold out, man. I used to love it when you said the N-word. That was so awesome. Yes, I'm white. And just like, it's like, man, how old do you think that person is? They have to be an adult, like well into adulthood now, right? To be able to say that now. And it's like, God, ooh, you sound annoying as shit. It's like, it really feels like there was this, they get this sense of a personal betrayal out of the fact that this white guy won't say the N-word anymore. And it's very telling, because it's like they can't believe that he would just come to the conclusion that maybe that wasn't like a good thing, or maybe he changed as a person and he doesn't approve of that anymore. No, it's like a conspiracy theory. It has to be because it's not, he won't get monetized anymore. That's what it is. These two things can't just coincide, right? It couldn't even be that the punishment and the criticism that he got for that kind of content made him reflect at all on what he was like as a person. No, he was 27 when he made those, so essentially every single part of his personality was locked in forever, and people will never change. And there's also this interesting kind of like thing. It reminds me of how there's this assumption that when someone is rude or when someone's an asshole, that they're like, oh, they're being real. Like, you got this a lot with Trump. They're being real. They're talking. They're really saying what's on there. They tell it like it is. And it's funny because built into that is this assumption that like being negative or being edgy or rude or mean is who that person really is inside. And there's that kind of, there's a kernel of truth. There's like the logic is that, oh, well, you know, being those things is frowned upon to, let's say, most people, right? Those are generally considered maybe not great qualities, like being mean and just being an asshole, right? So if you're gonna do that, you're doing it at the expense of your view in like your social standing, which means you have to be really dedicated to it because it's some kind of like social sacrifice, which ignores the fact that there is still an audience of people who are like legitimately like that, you know, and who also are fine with that. Like, have you ever thought that maybe the people who go up and they say crazy inflammatory shit are doing it because they know there's people who love that stuff? Do you remember Donald Trump? Have you ever thought that, like, it kind of reveals this assumption made by a lot of those people that is, I don't know, not everyone, I'm sure, but I feel like there's this implication that everyone on the inside really wants to say the N-word. They really want to drop a hard R, and they can't because of, like, society or some, like, vague construction that they've come up with. That society doesn't want you to say it. Or, you know, whatever mean, awful shit you want to say. They don't like that. And it's it's like, you know, it's like Freud going, everyone wants to have sex with their mothers. Everyone actually wants to have sex with their mothers. And it's like, Dr. Freud, do you think that you want to have sex with your mom? And he's like, no, that's ridiculous. Everyone wants to do that. There's definitely a behavior I've noticed in some people where they have this belief and it's like, yeah, everyone wants to do that. I feel like everyone's got stuff like that to some extent. They're like, yeah, everyone thinks like this, or everyone's like this, or everyone does this, you know, every relationship is like this. And then you're like what? And then they just describe some like really unhealthy behavior. You're like, not every relationship is like that. That's a problem. I recently, and even with like other little things, it's so funny when you look at like all these assumptions that you make about stuff. I recently had a friend who came out to me as transgender, and they were saying, which was a real shock to me. And when I was asking them about it, they said that they came to like, they came to the realization, well, for like a couple different reasons. But one thing that they told me was that they learned that it's not normal to just assume that everybody wants to be a woman. I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. So when I was growing up, I was like, oh yeah, everyone wants to be a woman. And if you're like a man, you just got unlucky. And I just assumed everyone felt like that. I was like, no, not everyone feels like that. They're like, yeah, I know that now. All these like funny little assumptions. I'm absolutely guilty of it too. That's one of the reasons why I just kind of like didn't get help for my anxiety for a really long time. I was like, oh yeah, because I had super severe death anxiety, and I was really scared of dying for a long time, and like probably my whole life until a year or two ago. And one of the ways I rationalized it was like, oh yeah, everyone's super afraid of dying because it's like it's the biggest problem ever, and everyone has to deal with it. And the only reason that everyone isn't as like paralyzingly afraid of it to the point that they're having panic attacks like me is because I'm the only one who actually thinks about it. Which is like obviously crazy, right? Like it's an irrational way to rationalize something. But I legitimately, like, that's what I thought. That was just my assumption was, oh yeah, everyone's like that. They just don't talk about it because they don't think about it. And I'm the only person who acknowledges it. So like you find all these weird little assumptions to rationalize away the things about yourself that like you don't recognize are different, or not always a problem necessarily. There's plenty of harmless things that people just assume. But yeah, I don't know. That was a little kind of like thought tangent that I went off on.